So here's one. Why isn't God more predictable?
Go, take all the fun out of life. Yeah, no, I think God is very predictable. God is very predictable. The predictability of God is that life is chaotic and that God is present in the midst of the chaos, that there is a pattern to the midst of the chaos, and so that God is very predictable. The predictability is that life is chaotic and that life goes like crazy. And the predictability of God goes back to what I said about suffering, is God is very predictable and that God is present in the midst of the chaos.
I would agree with that.
There you go.
Do you want to add anything?
No, I like that.
Okay, this one has to be for the two of you, because I think you might be on opposite sides of the fence on this one, but I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on reincarnation? Or heaven and hell, and do bad people go to heaven? So that's really about 3 questions. What are your thoughts on reincarnation?
So I'm a huge reincarnationist. I really believe that there is something that happens next. I've just been around long enough that I really believe that our souls are continuing to emerge, continue to evolve. I really believe that that what happens. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what happens, but when you look at almost all the major world religions, they believe in something that happens, and that the soul continues to emerge. In the first 200 years, actually I think it's the first 400 years of the development of Christianity, they believe very strongly in what is called the transmigration of the soul, which is reincarnation. The soul stays intact in transmigration. The soul stays intact after death, and that then through the process of life and going into the resurrection, the presence of God, the soul stays intact and enters into the next incarnation, so that which makes Steve, when I die, it stays intact, goes to the presence of God, and under God's guidance and direction, the soul reemerges into another life form. But the intactness of my soul is not lost, but transmigrates into the next essence.
Any comments, Tom?
I would not want to discount the possibility of reincarnation, but it's not a huge part of my faith structure. I believe more that we've got one shot. This is our shot. Do the best that we can with it. Do the most with it. This is our shot now. If we're reincarnated and get a second shot, it's okay by me.
Good.
Okay, and heaven and hell, I'll take a shot of that. What are my thoughts on heaven and hell? Well, heaven, after we die, perhaps, and I trust that there is a better place, heaven, some sort of spectacular place. You use the word paradise, where we enter into a place that we cannot even begin to imagine. I've had visits from my father since he has died. My daughter has as well, and so I believe there is a space waiting for us. I don't know what it looks like, and I trust that I'm not going to be walking around in this exact body that I have now. If I do, I hope I'm 18. But and as far as hell, I do not believe in the fiery hell that we, hear about in stories and whatnot. I believe that we can create our own hell by some of the bad decisions we make. We can create hell by receiving a bad diagnosis. I'm thinking right now of the shooting over at 470. Those families are in hell right now. Yet I trust that with the people that are also on the scene, God is in the midst of that, bringing hope and comfort to those who are suffering.
Good. Go for it. That's good.
What? Do I believe hard people go to hell?
Let me deal with that one. Okay. Do hard or horrid or terrible people go to hell? No.
Or to heaven, to heaven. Do hard people go to heaven?
I think that everybody goes to what is next, to what is next. Jesus called it paradise. I believe everybody goes to what is next. I believe what is next, that even people who have committed horrific crimes, and everybody says, well, what about Adolf Hitler? It's like, yes, even an Adolf Hitler goes to what is next, and if grace is grace, if grace is as big as we want to say grace is, then even an Adolf Hitler is going to be wrapped up into what is grace. This is also why I believe in reincarnation, is I also believe that this soul of Adolf Hitler needs a lot to learn, and that his soul needs to go back through and relearn the lesson of what it means to lead a grace-filled life. And so I believe that God said, you need to do this whole thing again and live again and to mature again. But I do believe that there was grace.
So minutes ago, a shooter and an officer arrived in
What paradise?
heaven the next moment. How are they greeted?
Through God's presence and God's grace. I mean, I don't think you can say God's grace is here and God's grace is not there. I believe that God's grace envelops literally every single human being. I mean, we're all creations of God. I believe that God sent us here. I believe that God welcomes us home. As horrid and as terrible as a circumstance like that is, there is no you go there, you come here. I just don't believe that. I think I got a text. Let me just double check. No, I did not receive a text. Well, no. Okay.
Theological anthropology. Do you believe all are inherently good? That kind of ties into what we were talking about.
Short answer, yes. I believe that people are inherently good. We're born with the Spirit of God within us. The Spirit of God is good. And that's our starting point. I think sometimes we get lost and we do things that are maybe not so good. But I think it's our basic nature to be good. I think it's our basic nature to want to please God. I think it's our basic nature to want to live within the will of God.
I would agree with that.
Good. Yeah. I want to make sure let's watch our time. I want to make sure we get to as many of these as possible.
Okay. How do Protestant churches determine who becomes a saint?
The Protestant churches. Well, who are you directing that? You answer that one. You know this one.
We
Go
asked
for
the
it.
Pope.
No, you know
I
this
think
one.
in the Protestant churches, we're all saints. We're all set aside by God. We're all holy. We're saints just because we are created in the image of God.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good.
What are our views regarding universalism, the denominational views as well as our own personal views?
So,
They are not one and the same.
right, no, like definitely the Presbyterian and the Methodist, I think more the UCC would go with the universal concept. But depending upon where you are on the spectrum within the Presbyterian Church and where you are within the United Methodist Church, there is a definite distinction between those who go to heaven and versus those who go to hell. I mean, we are on the far end of the spectrum that believes in universalism, that all people are saved. I mean, that's my own personal belief. That's what I teach you Sunday in and Sunday out, that God saves everybody. But you have to remember that we're on the far end of that spectrum, and the more you go to this end of the spectrum, you're going to find churches, Presbyterian, Methodist. I really don't think UCC. I could be really wrong, but definitely within Methodist and UCC, they do teach and preach a distinction between saved and not saved. Tom, what do you think about the UCC?
I would say the UCC really doesn't go there. The UCC is much more everyone's equal.
Right.
The motto of the UCC is that we may all be one. And so I don't think we really don't focus on the saved and the lost.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I didn't think so.
Okay, this appeared in the first service. I'll ask it again. And it appeared in the second service. You keep mentioning retirement. When are you going to retire? That's come up several times, so I thought I'd give it another go.
Okay, so I'm 58. I turned 59 in April. The number that I'm aiming for is 65. Do the math. However, that is not a number that is set in concrete. You know, for me, what I pay attention to is the call of God. What is God calling me to do? What is God calling us to do? If it is 65, then that is going to be a reflection of me feeling as though God's saying retire. Now, having said all that, I want to make sure that you understand that there's a lot of work and there's a lot of ministry that needs to be done between here and there. And whatever day I set, that God and I set is going to be my retirement date, I am not going to be coasting these last years. Up until the day I walk out of this place, I'm going to be all over you to be the living people of the kingdom of God. And so whether I retire, whether I stay, really is, who cares? Because the most important thing, we got a lot of work to do right now. And I'm not counting the days till I retire because I frankly love what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. And so it really comes down to, when does God call me to retire? If it's 65, it's April 10th, and we'll have a big party.
Amen. Okay, this comes from a Facebook viewer, which I think is cool, so we're going to take this. If you weren't pastors, what would your profession be?
Ah.
That's a hard one.
No, I know exactly what.
Lawyer.
Attorney.
Attorney.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'd love to be
Whoa.
an attorney.
I think I would have been an airline pilot.
An airline pilot.
Yeah, I love to fly. Love to fly.
I think I would be a travel agent because I love to travel. Is hell just the absence of God? Do we think hell is the absence of God?
I'd say yes. Yes. I think that it's not even so much the absence of God. God's always present. But it's when we close ourselves off to the presence of God.
So, but that begs a theological question, though. Is God ever absent from us, or are we ever absent from God? Are we absent from God? If God is always present to us, are we ever absent from God?
No. We're never absent from God. We can turn off our awareness of God's presence.
So is that when there's hell, when we turn ourselves off from the presence of God?
Yes.
But God is always present, so can that
That's
actually
right.
be hell?
You would have been an attorney.
Well, I'm thinking of my son, like one of yours, my son's a self-proclaimed atheist, and so he is not aware of the presence of God, but I also think he has a very happy and joyous life, so I don't think he thinks he's in hell, but maybe that's because God is always with him, even if he doesn't know that. What do you say about your...
My atheist son is the same way. And he lives a meaningful, joyful life, doesn't believe... what better way to rebel against a minister parents than to say, I don't believe in God. If you have a kid this way who doesn't go to church, believe in God, don't make it a big deal. Don't make it a big deal. Celebrate the fact that you are with them and that you're having a good life with them and you're planting a seed of faith and hope and love within them. And who knows where God's going to take that. My atheist is 25. That's pretty young. Pretty young. He's not married, doesn't have kids. He hasn't run into a major life trauma. All that stuff affects him. If he wants to call himself an atheist at 25, bless him.
What about 33?
Bless him. Bless him. I'm not worried about that. That's still young.
So that kind of leads right into this question. I think you answered it. How do you guide a teen who says they don't believe in God? I said, just love them. I love them unconditionally.
And also, I believe in helping them think through it. That's what I always did with my teens. I had two who were, when they were teenagers, were atheists. I always said, so tell me about the God you don't believe in. And he said, well, I'm a Buddhist. I said, great, the temple starts at 6:30. I'll take you downtown and we'll go to temple.
Wrong.
Oh, well, wait a minute. And so it's just allowing the kids to be kids and going with them.
So Tom, do you think empathy is a God-given emotion or a learned emotion?
Ooh,
That's a good question.
Well, I think it's a human emotion, so therefore it must be God-given. I believe that God is an empathetic God, and if we're created in God's image, then we're created as empathetic human beings, and therefore it
But
must
what
be
about the
God-given.
people who are not empathetic?
Some people just get it wrong.
Well, okay, but it goes back to your question as far as if people are born inherently good, inherently bad.
Yeah.
Do you believe in a bad seed? The old bad notion that there are some people from the dawn of their creation were just created evil?
No, I don't believe that. I believe people were created inherently good. We get free will. It's free will. We get to choose. We decide what we're going to do with it. God's given us the gifts.
And it doesn't have to be either or, it can be both
Yeah.
and.
And
I mean,
sometimes it's one
we
and
learn
some-
empathy perhaps from our parents, our friends, our spouses.
Well, and sometimes it's one, sometimes it's another, and we go back and forth. I think we just keep trying to get it right.
We do go back and forth. I have been known to say words to people in my family, get over it. That is not very empathetic. Come on, who else has ever said that? Yeah,
I
okay.
bet you John has never said that to you, however.
Never.
I didn't think so.
If no one went with Jesus when he went to pray on the mountain before the arrest, how do they know what he prayed about?
Well, there was a little guy who was sitting beside him who was taking notes. No, it goes back to the fact that we take the Bible seriously, not literally. We know that there are a lot of myths and legends that developed around Jesus, around the disciples. We know that not a single place in the Gospels were people following Jesus around, taking a video of him. They didn't have a steno pad, when taking down literally every single word he said. But that these are the part of the legends, the myths that developed around Jesus. And what's interesting, though, is that it's a legend that this is a prayer tradition that followed Jesus, that developed Jesus literally throughout the decades after Jesus lived. So for me, was somebody actually there with him? No, somebody wasn't. Stories were that he was by himself. However, there were stories that developed out of that about who Jesus was and how Jesus prayed, but then followed through the next 40 years of the gospel traditions before the gospels were actually written. Read my next book.
Read your next book, coming out soon.
Hey, we only have a couple minutes left.
Okay.
There's one that I really want to get at,
Okay,
a
go
question that I
ahead.
want to get at, and that is, what are we doing about church security? I think that a lot of people have questions about church security following the shootings down in Texas. The shootings down in Texas let us all know that we can't put our heads in the sand anymore, that we have to realize if it can happen in a church in Texas, it can happen literally anywhere, and the churches are kind of the next target. So at Columbine, we're taking this very, very seriously. We have a committee that has been formed that is looking at kind of how a church security task force, and they're studying the issue. They have been endorsed by the church council. I'm looking over here because Jerry Clayton's the president. The council has endorsed it. They're doing work and research to look at all the different ways how to protect the congregation. We do have active shooter plans already in place if something were to happen. Downstairs to protect the children and the youth. We're looking at ways. We are in the beginning of looking at how to protect the congregation from having people stationed in the narthex as well as throughout the congregation in case different things happen. We have security measures in place to take care of people when they're sick and ill in the worship service. That happened on Christmas Eve at the 11 o'clock service. And we did exactly as it went, as it was written down, exactly as it happened. I was very proud of the congregation and the staff as they responded. We're going to be looking at what to do with if there's a fire, if there's ever a fire in the sanctuary, how to actually evacuate the sanctuary. We'll probably be doing in 2018 some fire drills to look at how do we get out of this building safely, how do we get our kids out. I think the most important thing is that we are taking this very seriously, and in 2018 we will be coming to you with our security plan that we will be practicing and putting in place every single Sunday morning.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we need to come to an end.
Yeah, we had some great questions in here. I wish we could have gotten to all of them. We will take them back to our office and read through them. And if you have anything that we didn't answer, grab one of us after worship and we'll do our best to see what we can do to give you an answer.
And the next one, why don't you do the pastoral prayer, Jane? Yeah, you got it?
Please join me for prayer. Gracious and loving God, we come before you today and our hearts are filled with the joy of Christmas time, little children in our midst, and our hearts are heavy. At the same time, so many are missing loved ones who were not here for the first time this Christmas. And our hearts go out right now to the families on 470 who were affected by the shooters, the death, and more news that we do not yet know. So God, we keep all of the ups and downs, the good and bad, in our prayers. And we thank you for this church, Columbine United Church, a place where we are free to ask questions, to seek answers, and live and worship among people that may not agree with one another. For God, this is a church that is changing the way people see God. And we thank you as we continue to remember the birth of your Son, that this tiny little babe came to live among us, the very beating heart of God. And Jesus is with us and walks with us through our days. His arms surround us. His arms surround us when we are doing your will, God, and even when our backs seem to be turned and we are following our own paths and seeking our own will. But we are thankful that you are with us always. And now, God, you gave us one prayer to pray, one that Jesus taught us, one that has been said throughout the ages. And now we join our hearts and voices saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.